Hello and welcome to part 1 of my center console radio mount and lighting controller. I built this center console mainly to mount a dual band ham radio, scanner, CB radio, and touchscreen lighting controller, but it also has storage, 2 cup holders, 4 USB ports, a tablet mount, and plenty of other things. Links to all the parts will be in the description. I started by making a technical drawing in CAD. I knew I wanted a large storage space in the back. Then I wanted it to dip down to 8 inches for the radios in the midsection, and then the front panel with the touchscreen would be angled towards me. I created a layout for the panel, taking into account how deep the components were. I designed everything in CAD and even mapped pictures of the actual radios to the model. I even made some animations. That silver box you see is an RFID reader and keypad, but I didn't end up having a practical use for it, so I didn't put it in.
We're going to be making it out of 1/2 inch thick MDF. Got this at Home Depot. It was a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet, but I had them cut it in half into 4 foot by 4 foot. It's about $24. So basically, I'm just tracing each of the shapes using my technical drawing onto the MDF, and then I'm going to cut them out with my jigsaw.
I drew all the lines on the MDF in pencil and then cut them out with a jigsaw. A jigsaw is a good tool for making curved edges, and it came in handy when cutting the inner corners of the side pieces, but I should have used a circular saw to make the straight cuts. The jigsaw was very slow and didn't make very straight cuts, but I didn't have a circular saw at the time. After I finished cutting out every piece, I filed the jagged edges down. This wasn't completely necessary, since once it was leather wrapped, you wouldn't even be able to tell that it was jagged. Next, I cut out the holes for the cup holders using a 3 3/4 inch hole saw. It's ideal to use a drill press for this, but I didn't have one at the time. I tried to vacuum up the sawdust as I cut, since MDF dust is pretty bad to breathe in. Wear safety goggles and a dust mask whenever possible. I test fitted the pieces with clamps and anything else I could find to prop up the pieces. All the gaps and jagged edges won't be noticeable at all once it's leather wrapped. The form of jointery I went with is pocket holes. MDF is basically layers of fibers, so if you try to screw into an edge, it'll split. Pocket holes are ingenious because they go in at an angle from the grain and therefore are much stronger, even in MDF. They're still not that strong in MDF, but it's the strongest way to screw MDF I can think of. I won't use glue or nails because I want everything to be easily disassemblable. I often want to make improvements, so I need to easily be able to unscrew a piece and remove it. I'm using the Craig pocket hole jig. It goes for about $40 at Home Depot, but they do have a better one for $100 that I should have bought. The more expensive one mounts to a table and has a built-in clamp to hold the workpiece. Also, the clamp doesn't come with the jig for the cheaper one, so once you buy the jig and the clamp, you're basically at the same price as the more expensive jig, except it's got a built-in clamp. The jig I got is best for portability or if you need to make holes in something that you can't lift onto a workbench. Sometimes it's easier to bring the jig to the board instead of the board to the jig. I'm using 1-inch screws to attach it. There's a chart on the pocket hole screw boxes that say how long of a screw you need for the thickness of your boards. I'm using 1/2-inch boards, so 1 inch is the right screw. I'm driving them in with the drill, using the clutch so that I don't strip out the MDF. Then I drilled holes for the screws that attach the panel that attaches the radios and cup holders to the body. I also countersunk them so they sit flush. The lid for the storage area has a gas spring to open it. I drilled pilot holes for the screws that hold the main connector into place. The connector is an aerospace grade 12-pin connector with 6 high current and 6 low current pins. I drilled a hole with a 1/2-inch twist bit and then cut a tunnel out with a hacksaw for the wires to pass from the storage area to the front of the console. I used a hole saw to cut out the 2 holes for the USB ports and 12-volt socket. I test fit them along with marking and drilling holes for the screws of the faceplate. I used spray adhesive to stick 2 layers of an egg crate mattress topper to the lid of the storage area. This will make a nice soft armrest. I trimmed off the excess foam with an exacto knife. I measured and bent pieces of aluminum bar into an L shape based on how much of the face of each radio I wanted to stick out. I used a Forstner bit to drill out the holes for the antenna connectors. The second hole was a mistake since the seat of my car blocked one of the antenna connectors, so I eventually ended up just putting it on the other side. Lastly, I use a larger Forstner bit to make a hole on each side for a brushless cooling fan for the radios, since it's a 50-watt radio in an enclosed space. I don't want the radios to get hot, so each side has a cooling fan. In the next video, I'll show how to wrap each piece in a leather fabric or any other type of fabric, making the touchscreen panel, installing the electronics, and programming the touchscreen. Stay tuned and subscribe for more content like this.